well, it's really important that I don't just look at who's following me right now, but who has found value in what I'm doing.
You know, if you don't know who you're speaking to, you don't know what content to put out.
I want to have their fitness transformation with you because they trust you and you've built up that kind of connection with them. Hi, I'm Sarah, Product Marketing Specialist for MacroActive and host of the One Up Project podcast.
Right on. Awesome. Well, I'm Alec. I'm a Client Success Manager and I'm also a former personal trainer.
So, Alec, how would you define a niche?
Define a niche. So I would say, coming from the, from the view of a content creator or a personal trainer, your niche is primarily, who you're speaking to. That's what I think. It's primarily who you directly talking to. But it's also, in the training side, it's also the specific individual person that you work with or you train, right? And that's how, what you specialize in is technically your niche. So
I was just gonna say, from my experience, like how I would describe my niche is the specific group within the broader group as like supporting what you've just said. In terms of, you kind of will always talk to a broader group of people, but your niche are going to be those more loyal, like more specific people within that.
How would you sort of come to, discover or find your niche?
I think a lot of it was sort of by accident, but a few things I looked at to indicate who I was talking to mostly were podcast statistics. So things like my demographics of age and, gender, things like that. And then talking to people, to be honest, I spend at least 1 to 2 hours potentially a day in my DMs just replying to people and getting to know them and working out their life stage. And so that a lot of that has indicated how I use my content to talk to those people. And so over time I've developed a really good understanding of who it is specifically I'd be talking to and kind of the different groups outside of that might exist. I don't think that I've worked it out in an exact science or anything. I definitely think there's still much I could learn about it, but definitely have a good general idea of who I'll be talking to. What about yourself? How have you defined it?
I agree, because it's not something you get straight away from the get-go. Like when you first starting content creation or you're building an account, it's very rare that you're going to come into it exactly knowing who your niche is, right? Who you're speaking to straight away. So like you said, right, you're constantly over time, you're looking at all those different factors and starting to understand who's really engaging with the content, who's finding it valuable. So I think, from a personal training standpoint, it's kind of the same thing, right? So when you sort of start out as a trainer, I imagine, when a lot of young trainers into the gym, there's no sort of set niche. It's like, just train anyone and kind of get that experience. And it's, it's also when you move online, is you kind of have to train so many different people to really understand like who it is that you specifically will work best with. So, it's never a case that you go in and say, this is basically who I want to work with. I want to train guys and help them build muscle. That might be your idea of who you think you're going to target, but you start training a whole different bunch of people, and then it's like you realize, actually, I'm better suited to training, this demographic, or, so I think it's just a thing that you kind of discover over time.
I think it's really interesting you say that, because I would say for me as well, it's really important that I don't just look at who's following me right now, but who has found value in what I'm doing and has found that over time, like who's been with me since I started the podcast 2 years ago now, and why are they still here to this day? Like, what is different about that specific group of people? And I guess using that to understand your niche better is also really important. Why is it important for businesses, and particularly our clients, to have a good understanding of who their niche is?
Cool. So I really think it's again, it comes down to messaging, right? So if you have to have that understanding of who your niche is to produce the content for that niche, right? So if you know exactly who you're talking to, therefore it's easier to not only produce content and specifically talk to those individuals, but it's easier then to convert them, right? So when you see a lot of creators and trainers that, you know, will be sort of everything, right? So they'll sort of, you know, they'll do everything. But, you know, when you're a young trainer or you're new into the online world, it's very hard to break into the market when you're trying to be, you know, a trainer for everything, when there's so many other trainers doing that. So I think when, you know, if you have a specific niche and you really sort of narrow in on that, you can sort of cut through, you know, the market and kind of really, you know, build up a sort of a brand and build up your profile as a coach for that niche, right? So I think it's better, in terms of, you know, content, in terms of conversions, and it's, and it just, as a coach, it also just helps build your authority.
I think something we're understanding more and more now, just in the world, is how important personalization is. And so we understand that from a platform point of view within MacroActive, that being able to personalize your platform to your client's lifestyle or life stage is really important. But also doing that within your content to your niche is super important as well, and kind of meeting them where they're at so you can really support them throughout that journey.
That's right. It's you know, content, you know, if you don't know who you're speaking to, you don't know what content to put out. So, you know, and I think that's where you start with the content creation. You build those content pillars and work out the topics. When you actually know exactly who you're speaking to, it shapes everything that you prep and plan. It shapes exactly what topics, you know, what type of content you're going to specifically do when you're putting posts or reels and so forth. So, you know, it's it's kind of the starting point for your content creation journey, really.
Absolutely.
So would you say there's a point where you can be too specific, like you can be too, you know, niche, like narrow, and you know, is that do you think that's an issue?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think it depends what you're trying to do, like why you are trying to be specific with your niche. Like a good example for me is that I've probably gone a lot more niche than other people in the space that I'm in. Like some people might target a broader group than what I have. Like the content I do, because there's some variation to it, it's going to appeal to quite a specific type of person. And I think that's in some ways hindered my growth because it's meant that I don't grow as fast as maybe other platforms or podcasts doing a similar thing, because I'm sort of targeting a more specific group of people. But at the same time, I've developed a really, what I would say is a super loyal community and group of people who I can talk to about literally anything. Like I talk to these people like they're my best friends. It's so funny, but I love it so much, and that's what fulfills me about it, and that's why I'm doing it, is to have those meaningful connections. So would I say there's such a thing as being too niche? I think it depends on why you're doing it and what the point is of you having an audience and a platform, and that will indicate whether or not it's smarter to be broader or more specific. So what do you think?
Totally, because it's, you know, if you go too specific, you end up risking, you know, not missing out on potential other audience, right? So if you start going narrow and this individual who enjoys this, and, you know, they're located here, and you start to really risk, you know, alienating or not reaching, you know, potential people that may really engage, right? Because you're being too specific. So I think it, like you said, it comes back to the whole starting to kind of put out content that's sort of more general, and that kind of over time you start to pick up who's becoming the fans, and, you know, who's the, you know, people that are actually DMing you saying this is really valuable content, like I'm learning so much. It's like, okay, these are the people that are getting most value, and that's and it helps you go double down, put more of that content out.
And those are the people that will, you know, stick by you, and for trainers, I suppose that means they'll be the ones that want to have their fitness transformation with you because they trust you, and you've built up that kind of connection with them where they feel like they actually personally know you and understand your values and what you care about. And so that's why I think it's important that I've gone to that level with my niche. But for someone else with a different purpose, it might not work as well. So I completely agree with what you're saying. Is it possible to target the same niche across all these different platforms we're on, or should we be adapting it?
Maybe you don't define who that person is exactly, but you come to understand the types of individuals that, you know, who actually getting results with you, and who are actually, really sort of building that relationship with you as a coach.
When you can, like you mentioned, have that authentic purpose within what you're doing, that's when you know that you have integrity, because you actually care about your clients. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below if you enjoyed the video.
So if you too want to be successful and scale your impact, check us out at the link www.macroactive.com.
And also make sure you check out our socials as well. That will be linked in the description below.